Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. If you want to support me, that is, on my Patreon. Today we are doing Chapter 2 of Once Broken. The first thing that occurred to him was that he'd fallen asleep sitting. How had that happened? The second was wondering why the usual sound outside his office weren't there. It was only one building from the it was only one building from the store, so he should have heard the people walking by, conversing and complaining. He opened his eyes to the gray of a ship. Right, he grumbled. This was Alex's ship, Catherine's Folly. He rubbed his face. They'd rescued Tech, and now they were on their way to his home planet because Alex had a crazy notion a primitive place like that had a cure. Jacoby sighed. Second cryo under a day, third since this started, and he'd woken up disoriented again. He was out of practice. He thought as he stood and stretched. At least his body had taken to it easily again. He glanced at the medical bed, which was empty. Alex was in the pilot's chair. Where's Tech? He asked, stepping behind Alex. Tristan, he answered, entering information. Huh? The screen showed a station, older design but in good condition, with a sliver of a planet in the bottom corner. His name is Tristan? Tex was just a mask he wore to fool the lot of you. There was a coolness in Alex's voice that hadn't been there on the other side of cryo. He looked over his shoulder at the table. Where is Tristan, then? Sleeping in the room. He looked at the ladder. Sleep would do him good. Cryo didn't help with rest. Where are we? Carmina Station. I thought we were heading for Somalia. Carmina is the Somalian station. Jacoby looked at it again. Definitely a corporate model. He'd seen hundreds of them in his career, each of them identical to the other, except for the wear and damage. That name doesn't sound Somalian. Tristan doesn't either. Oh. Tristan doesn't either, Alex said, entering commands. But you're right, it isn't. The station's registry came up. Definitely SpaceGov approved, which meant corporate built. A few lines down, the name of the owner was listed. Leisure Tech. Definitely corporate. But what was the biggest leisure corporation doing putting money in a place like this? They were known for cruise ships, stations where you could see nebulas and other wonders. Mobius had been one of theirs until it turned out that black holes weren't the touristic attraction they expected them to be. He checked the navigation readout. Why didn't you wake me sooner? I could have taken us in. I can handle docking. It's mainly automated. I just have to keep an ear on the system, and they keep trying to slip in programs. If I don't have anything to do, I'm going to contact the folks back home, let them know what's going on while we're not back already. He sat at the communication board and tapped the command to activate it. Nothing happened. He tried a second time. Those things shouldn't lock him out unless... Jacoby sighed. Alex, you can't seriously think telling them what's going to interfere with. I'm setting up a secure line of communication. I do know how to do that. Alex didn't reply. The board lit up with a man appearing on the screen. Denny's. His eyes went wide. Jake! He spoke over the screen. Everyone, Jacoby's calling in. There was a cacophony of sounds and Jacoby smiled. The sounds of home. All right, quiet down, everyone. The man focused on the screen. How are you, Jake? How are Tech and Alex? Last time you called, you said you'd be going after those who took him in a few days. That was more than a year ago for us. Did you find him? Are you on your way back? Alex eyed him with a loud, watch what you say expression. I'm good, Klein. Alex is fine, too. Tech, he trailed off, trying to work out how to formulate his answer. Tell me you found him, Jake. Tell me he's okay. The urgency in Klein's voice was echoed by the murmurs from the unseen crowd. Jake, tell me you're bringing our boy home. The deadly glare Alex gave the screen would have made Jacoby laugh if he didn't know it was a it was a promise Alex could and would have no problem keeping. He hadn't spent enough time socializing with the others to understand that Tech was all their boys. Their boy. We rescued him. The relief on Klein's face echoed through the crowd. When it quieted, Jacoby continued. But they hurt him bad. The men nodded. They'd have to. Tech wouldn't give up his secrets to anyone. Jacoby nodded, and he didn't. Tell him I'm proud of him. He looked over the screen, then returned his focus to Jacoby. Cornelius isn't here. I'll call her and let her know Tech's been hurt. When do you think he'll be back? I don't know. I don't have the navigation details to work out the time frame, but I expect we're looking at an objective year minimum to get back, and that doesn't take into account how long we'll be here. Here? Why didn't you come right back? The med bay took care of Tech's physical injuries, but his mind isn't something it can handle. They scrambled that pretty good. We're going to see an expert about it. That sounded better than Alex's. Then Alex is crazy and thinks a bunch of primitives will do a better job of it than anyone with actual training could. We'll head home right after that. The crowd had gone quiet and Klein was solemn. You take good care of our boy. You hear? You don't have to worry about that. If I let Tech get one scratch, I think Alex will kill me. The crowd laughed, but Alex nodded, no trace of humor in his face. Alex had become far too intense during cryo for his liking. He almost missed what was said next. Was there a space battle? That sounded suspiciously like Gregory. He should have been old enough to know better than encourage talk of violence among the younger folks. That question opened the floor to others, and for a long minute nothing made any sense. All right, Klein yelled. Be quiet. Let Jake talk. He shook his head in amusement. How about it, Jake? Care to regale us with what happened? Unless you can promise me no parents are there, and that you'll offer me protection should one of them get wind of this, I'm going to need a minute to figure out a safe way to recount this. You know Denny's always a safe place for you. Let's see. It was us, plus some of Alex's friend, a bounty hunter, a lawman, a locksmith, and his girlfriend. Did she get hurt? A young girl asked again. Did you have to rescue her? He chuckled. No, I didn't have to do that. She could take care of herself. We also had a medic and a bunch of muscle. Are they still with you? Klein asked. They had their own ship, he said. He didn't think telling them Alex had basically abandoned them on a freshly pirated ship was a good idea. Did you kill a lot of bad people? Martin, a woman exclaimed. There was a lot of fighting, Jacoby said. They didn't want to give him up. Once we had Tech, we left. That's it? Someone asked, disappointed. Basically. I did have to fight off 5 merc on my own when they tried to take over our ship, but yeah, that's it. This wasn't a vid. There was no drama added just to keep you entertained. Considering all the drama that had happened, it could have been a vid, Jacoby thought, but that they didn't need to know. All right, Klein called. You've gotten the news. This particular show's over, so get back to your food before it gets too cold and you start complaining to me. The complaints became fainter as people moved away. When Klein focused on Jacoby, all levity had left him. Okay, you've entertained them. Now I want the real news. How is he? Jacoby sighed and tried not to react to how Alex was watching him. I won't lie, he's in bad shape. You remember how he was when he came back? Sure, he was a mess. Thought Alex had dumped him, but he'd lost his job, right? Yeah, well, on top of that, they pumped him full of drugs, really bad stuff according to what I heard the medics say. They're out of his system, but the damage is done. Drugs. Klein said, his eyes going distance. That's never good stuff. Jacoby nodded. As you can imagine, they made the situation worse. Klein had a history with drugs. They were apart what had taken him to Tyrion too. You take care of him, Jake. You bring them both back home where they belong. Don't worry. No matter what happens here, we're coming home after that. Klein nodded and ended the connection. Alex's face had grown expressionless during the last part, and Jacoby tried to see past it, but the man was completely closed off. Alex looked back to the screen and continued whatever he'd been doing before. Do you need me to contact the station? They were so close to it. All he saw on the screen was metal plating. Make arrangements for our stay. Already dealt with everything that's needed on the station. We're not staying there. We're going groundside. Jacoby waited. Care to let me in on exactly what you think they can do for Tristan? Fix him, Alex replied. So you've said before, but you weren't clear on the how. Somalia isn't the tech center of the universe. Do they have special psychologists I've never heard about? No. Jacoby sighed. Alex, give me something here. I want to help, but it's a Somalian thing. Alex snapped, the clang of the ship docking, adding finality to the words. He didn't like this. This was taking a job blind, and it didn't help that Alex was going to be present. None of those he'd taken over his career ever had ended well. Considered insisting for more information, but Tech came down the ladder. His fur was damp, and he had pants on. Jacoby hadn't seen them before, and they didn't fit exactly right. Something left over from the old crew? Tech stood behind them, eyes clear and alert. What's the status? He asked, his voice firm. Maybe he was better than Alex thought. He did seem to have shaken off the experience. If that was the case, they could simply start the undocking procedures and go home. Alex looked over his shoulder and Tech flinched. Jacob had never seen Tech flinch. He was always quiet but self-assured. Somehow, in that exchange, the authority had shifted between them, and Tech didn't know what to do about it. We've docked, Alex replied, back to studying the screen. I didn't feel like he was answering a question, just providing information. I registered us under your Parmelian ID. It's a nice and unobstructive one. No one's going to look at it twice. Anger flashed in Tech's eyes, but he didn't say anything. The anger surprised Jacoby more than the indecision. Anger was something he'd never thought Tech capable of. He'd seen him pestered by kids past the point where Jacoby would have been screaming at them to leave him alone, but Tech had continued entertaining them. Even when he sent them on their way, it was gently and with a smile. Jacoby reminded himself Tech had been through a lot recently. And to make allowances. Tech glanced to his left and gritted his teeth. We're going to have to arrange to get planetside. His voice was firm. Parmelian means mass transport. He can't afford private shuttle. Why is that important? Jacoby stood. It isn't like anyone's looking for you right now. Tech looked at him as if he'd only now realized he was present. The indecision was back. He opened his mouth, but looked to the left and snapped it shut, as if to keep from snapping at someone. When he looked back at Jacoby, his expression went from hard to friendly to hard again. Then, confused, he looked at the back of Alex's head. Jacoby knows about you, Alex said, still studying the screen. He was part of the rescue. He traced the line of code. Actually, he's known who you were since you started living there. Easy to find out, I believe, were the words he used. He typed something. Tech looked at him, fear in his eyes, then hardened with anger. Don't kill him, Alex said, and Jacoby thought. Alex said, and Jacoby thought there was an unsaid yet there. He decided it was his imagination. Alex was dealing with his boyfriend being unstable. That would affect him. The three of them, actually. Jacoby headed down the smuggler's hold to grab his bag. He found Alex's bag and took one of the bags left over from the mercs. He looked through and set aside the medkit, guns, and protein bars. The clothing was too small for Tech, but they would figure something out. He considered the gun. Something recent that he didn't recognize. Should he bring that? It had been a reflex, and his time in the military had taught him always carry a weapon. It had served him well while he was alert, but this wasn't a job. He put it down. He poked his head through the hatch to confirm with Alex that Tech did have his own stuff and went back to lie down without saying a word. The two of them were staring murder at each other. He'd been taught when he was young not to get between lovers, and the lesson had stuck. He went through the other bags until he found one that had clothing that would fit Tech. He removed any personal item, put in the nutrient bars and a few med kits, but no weapons. He decided handing one of those to Tech was a bad idea right now. He came out and they were still glaring at each other. No words had been exchanged, and he decided that if he let that continue, they might never leave the ship. He handed each a pack as he passed them to check the communication board for any messages the station had sent, including rules regarding weapons. Guns weren't allowed, as he'd expected. His own gun was in a shielded case, so he wasn't worried. As he turned, Alex was taking off his harness and putting it in the bag. Tech was going through the cabinets, a few guns already on the seats. He took another one as Zuru. Jacoby thought. Guns aren't allowed on the station. Tech didn't acknowledge him. He looked through the cabinets and took a case from it. He put the gun in and shoved that in his bag, then turned to look at both of them. We're heading out. Alex gets us passages on the earlier shuttle. We're not stopping for anything. We're not here to sightsee. We're going to the temple, then we're leaving. Understood? Jacoby nodded, responding to the tone of command more than the words. Another side of Tech he didn't know. Alex didn't react. Then the word registered. Temple? Tech turned before he could ask what a temple had to do with any of this. Alex didn't look like he'd answer anything. Tech opened a hatch in the ramp, which whined and resisted, a sign this ship hadn't often docked. On the other side, Tech paused to look at the hatch's lock, seeming indecisive. Then he continued down the small corridor, heading to another hatch. As they reached that hatch, text appeared before them in SpaceGov Standard, a repeat of what he'd read before exiting. It registered Alex's knife and brought a notice stating that Leisure Tech didn't allow knife to be carried in the open for the emotional safety of their customers. Tristan reached through it before it was done listing the rules, opened the hatch, and stepped through it, only to freeze, blocking the way. And this concludes Chapter 2 of Once Broken. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the book, as well as the other in the series, they are available at all major e-retailer. If you want to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to basically everything else I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the note, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.